In today's video, I discuss the politics of competing in the NPC and is cardio good in the off season? Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com, and this is day 4 in a row answering questions from my Instagram post on Sunday, where I requested you guys to give me some questions and I would answer them. And I've been answering them all week, and so I'm just going to continue the video series today. We'll skip all the intro mumbo jumbo and we'll just get right to the questions. Merhacker Smith asks, would love your wisdom and experience on this. This past year has been the first year of competing in NPC shows. I competed in 2 this year. My last show was 2 weeks ago and I walked away more discouraged than anything. I think I may have experienced the politics of competing not firsthand. My questions are, have you ever experienced favoritism or unfairness in judging? And 2, I am a self-taught, self-coach competitor constantly researching and studying to do this sport wisely and enjoyably. Will not having a coach work against me? It seems so far to not be in my favor to not have a coach. I have sought the judges for their feedback and have followed up on my messages to them to reach out again for feedback, but I'm being harped on for being insensitive towards them because they have other jobs. And it's not that at all. It's just me asking for feedback. Is this common in this sport? Thank you for doing the Q&A. It's always helpful to hear your opinion. All right, so Merhacker Smith asks a very interesting question, and it's basically about the politics of the NPC or politics of competing in general. Now, before I became involved in working with people in the NPC, I competed in the NPC myself in 2008, and I had been around quite a few shows, and I never really saw politics at that point. Having been around the message boards and the sport in general, you always hear about politics and how they play in the sport. What I have found, in my personal experience, and you guys can give feedback and say what you will, the shows that I have been to, the majority of the shows, I have not seen what I consider favoritism. I have not seen what I consider to be politics of the sport. I'm sure they exist, but when you're there at a show firsthand and you're watching it, that's really the only time you can criticize. Even as a competitor, when you're on stage, you can't see yourself from the judge's perspective. If you see pictures on the internet, you can't judge those because they are moments in time. When you see a physique in person up close, it's much easier to judge it. Now, with regards to the NPC and the politics that come out, I have kind of come up with a theory on what I believe actually happens in the NPC. You see, the NPC is enormous. They have thousands of shows each year. In Florida alone, I would guesstimate there's over 100 shows. And with that, with hundreds of competitors at these large shows, and you get the same judges judging these shows week in and week out, and judging is not a full-time career. You know, these people are usually doing this for the love of the sport. They want to be involved. And as a promoter, I know this. You know, I have judges that judge my show. And so it's very difficult to understand what those judges are looking for when you feel like you've been judged improperly. And so it's very important that you do the sport for the right reasons. But in regards to the politics, my thought on that is, it's less about politics of who your coach is or what you're doing behind the scenes or who you're talking to or who you know. I think it becomes more about familiarity. And in my experience, as I go to these shows over and over, I, as just a person watching, as a spectator, have actually started to recognize people. I see the same girls, the same guys do shows, and what that does is there's a built-in psychological value to recognizing someone. It's a visual recognition. And so when you recognize out of a group of 30 or 40 people, as some of these classes that people compete in actually have that many competitors, you see these people over and over and you actually start to look for them. I've actually noticed myself doing this. I'll see somebody come out on stage as a spectator and think, oh, I remember them from the other show, they look better. Without meaning to, I'm already biased because when I see that person come out, all the other people are blind to me, right? It then takes me a moment to go, oh, let's start comparing and looking. And sometimes what you'll end up doing is holding on to that person and kind of comparing people around them. And so I don't necessarily think it's 100% about politics, as in there's stuff going on with the judges. I think a lot of it has to do with familiarity, because one thing is some of these judges are opposing coaches, some of these judges are coaches, some of these people are just involved in the fitness industry, so they are familiar with the people that they're seeing on stage over and over every week. And so with familiarity, there may be some favoritism just based on the fact that they know them, and I don't think it's intentional. I think it's unintentional. I think I used to be more judgmental towards the NPC before I started getting involved in coaching and attending so many shows. For the most part, I believe that judges do their best job to judge things fairly, and if you have a great physique and you show up at a show, even if it's your first one, you will stand out. I have had girls and guys show up at shows that were quote unquote owned by a certain team and win, but they had outstanding physiques. They were so good that they could not be ignored. So at the end, I would just suggest that you really focus on having the best physique possible, looking the best you can, really loving the process, getting on stage and enjoying that, not having any expectations. And at the end of the day, if you feel you're being unfairly judged at the NPC, it might be a local show. It might be a local or regional issue. Maybe you could go out of state. Maybe you could travel. You could always try different organizations. I know the NPC is the largest and best amateur organization in the world, but there are other organizations out there that you could look into competing at. There are lots of drug-free organizations like the OCB, like the NGA, like the WNBF. So look into other organizations, look into what's around you, and just try a different experience, because at the end of the day, it's all about you enjoying the process, looking your best, and then getting on stage. Remember, whether or not they judge you doesn't change the person that you are and the things that you've accomplished, right? So a lot of success on stage comes down to many things that are not in our control, but what we can control is how much we enjoy the process and how much we get out of just accomplishing so many great things physique-wise. Hopefully that helps you. Mark Cham asks, when beginning a calorie restriction, how many calories do you suggest initially take away from the TDEE? Do you initially drop calories by, say, 500 kcals and then adjust to a lower amount, say subtracting 100 calories, once you stop losing weight from the initial 500? I understand the concept of reverse dieting, but am unsure if I should apply the concept to the beginning of a calorie restriction. All right, Mark Cham, I'm going to answer your question, but it's not going to be the answer you want. And the reason is, when beginning a calorie restriction for fat loss, a lot of information comes into play. That's why I, as a coach, request information. You have to fill out a questionnaire. I have to understand your diet history, your body fat, your body composition. All these things come into play, because we can't just make an initial 500 calorie drop if we're talking about a 110-pound girl who's only taking in 1,300 calories, right? So it really comes down to the position you're at. Now, if I have someone at 4,000 calories doing no cardio, then I think, yeah, a more aggressive approach to fat loss to start off, creating a 500 calorie deficit from week one might be the best way to go. So again, it all comes down to the specifics of the individual, and I don't have that information about you, but it's a great question, and it just depends on a few variables that I don't know. Ashton Housley asks, is it possible to lose body fat in a building phase by being super precise with your macros? Ashton, great question. Is it possible to lose body fat in a building phase? Well, I don't have enough information, and you probably guys are gonna get sick of me hearing this, but in my experience, yes, you can absolutely lose body fat in a muscle building phase if your body fat is well above its natural set point, to the point that you're actually increasing lean body mass while you're losing body fat. The scale might not show a bunch of changes, but you'll notice some inches coming off. Also, I have found that people that have been injured or have been out of the lifting game for a long time, and even though they're below or at their natural set point, they can actually put on a little bit muscle while they're in the building phase and lose some body fat simultaneously. This type of body recomposition is possible. Now, is it possible for someone who's very lean and has been training for a lot of years and has no time off to lose body fat while adding muscle, I would put that in the highly unlikely category. I'll never say never. There are some genetic anomalies out there, but I would say highly unlikely.
Asmin Kiaros asks, could you discuss why female competitors or female athletes in general lose their periods on prep or while dieting? Is it bad? Should they try to get it back, and how can they get it back?
Jasmine, thank you for the question. And yeah, I'll discuss why female athletes lose their menstrual cycle during contest prep. You see, I believe, as my buddy Eric Holmes expressed so well, that when the body gets very low in body fat, and calories get very low. This is an environmental change over thousands of years of evolution, which shows that it's not a good time for the human body to reproduce, right? I mean, think about it from an evolutionary perspective. Would you want to be born into a world where we don't even have enough food to maintain a healthy body weight? Because competition weight is not healthy in terms of reproduction. So what the body does is it starts to shift priorities, and that's where we get hormone changes, we get loss of the menstrual cycle. So many females lose their menstrual cycle early on, and other females keep it all the way through, even being stage lean. It's just an individual difference among everyone. Is it unhealthy? Depends on your definition of healthy. What we do as competitors is not always going to be considered healthy. We have a goal, we have a purpose. We are trying to get to the pinnacle of physique goals, and when we reach that pinnacle, sometimes it requires doing things that are considered unhealthy, getting body fat to levels that don't allow us to function 100% at our best. However, it's only for a limited time, and yes, it is possible to reverse this, and I do suggest that my female clients at least get to a place where they feel good and their hormones are working, and if they typically have a menstrual cycle, then I would like to see that come back as well.
Genesis Chantal asks, post-competition I rebounded and binged, ate and gained 10 pounds plus trying to get a grip. Would you recommend just jumping to maintenance calories just to get a hold of my diet?
Okay, Genesis. Now that you've put on 10 pounds post-contest and you're suggesting that you're just going to jump up to maintenance, I want to reiterate this. I said this in my video yesterday. At the end of contest prep, and if you haven't watched my video called How to Fix Your Metabolism, maybe you should. It'll explain what the maintenance calories actually do. Your maintenance calories are actually lower than they were when you started prep. Your metabolism has adapted. So returning to maintenance, your maintenance calories are actually closer to what they were at the end of contest prep. So jumping up to what you started your contest prep with, especially if it was a long diet, means you will continue to put on body fat. If you've already put on 10 pounds of body fat post-contest, this might be a good place for you to start a healthy reverse. And that would mean sticking to some macros that you feel you can handle. Not the macros you were dieting on at the end of contest prep, but maybe if you were doing a refeed, some refeed numbers would be good. Finding a number that you can stick to every day, because we want you psychologically to feel like you're winning every day. I don't want you to set some unrealistic goals for macros and then every day be struggling to hit them, and then you feel bad because you went over, and this creates a negative cycle that just happens over and over, and you overeat and you feel bad, and you just get into the fuck it approach. We don't want that to happen. So setting a good realistic goal for numbers you think you can hit, stick to them for a few days. If weight stabilizes, great. Let's add in some calories. Let's start the process of reversing properly so that you can maintain a physique that you're proud of and happy with. But don't think that just because you put on 10 pounds, your maintenance calories are now back to where they were before prep. They're not. You put on body fat quickly, you have not restored your metabolic rate yet.
Chris Colwell asks, what are your favorite go-to macro-friendly meal snacks when dieting?
Chris, great question. So I'll tell you some of my favorite macro-friendly snacks while dieting. I'd have to say my favorite is probably low-fat popcorn. And that's just because of the volume of food you get. There's a little bit of fiber in there, a little bit of carbs. And for 20 or 18 grams of carbs, you get an entire bowl of popcorn, and it just takes you a while to eat. So you get the sensation of eating. You're able to just kind of dig in and sit down and enjoy it and still not bust through like a bunch of calories. And there's also some fiber in there, so you're digesting it, you're feeling a little bit fuller. Depending on where you are in contest prep, you might not feel full ever, but I just really liked low-fat popcorn for that. So give that a shot.
Tara Chase 7 asks, is cardio in the off-season bad for when you go to start prep? I know it would depend on the person and even the division they're in, but just looking for some input, and also what type of cardio would you recommend?
Tara, thank you for the great question. And no, I do not believe that cardio in the off season is bad. I like to keep cardio in because guess what? And don't tell anyone. I like cardio. I enjoy the feeling. So I keep some cardio in. Also, I noticed a few years ago when I started contest prep and I started doing a couple sessions of like 15 to 20 minute cardio a week, I felt better throughout my physique. My joints felt better. I felt I was recovering better. And I actually discovered that doing some cardio will help reduce inflammation. It gets blood to the joints, to the soft tissues. It also gets blood to the muscles so that you're actually helping recovery. Now, at a certain point during prep, yes, it's going to be less effective at doing that because you're doing so much. But in the off season, I like to keep in a couple sessions of steady state. And the type of cardio I would recommend would be the bike. I think the bike, either recumbent bike or a stationary bike, is the best because of the position relative of the leg and the hip in the movement pattern. It relates closest to what we do when we do leg training. It's also low impact because it's a circular motion, so it's not a jarring, when you're walking, it's kind of, every time you step, you're getting a jarring motion. With the bike, you're kind of spinning, so you don't have that impact. So I'm a big fan of riding the bike. I don't do a lot of HIIT cardio in the off season. That's just because I prefer to, at the end of my training sessions, do a lot of intensity techniques like drop sets and supersets, and I get my heart up that way. And especially on lower body days, I really like to crush my legs. So there is generally some soreness going on almost at all times, but I still love some steady state cardio to reduce inflammation, promote recovery. And heck, it's okay if I do a little bit of cardio and I can eat a little bit more food in the off season. And I generally feel better and I enjoy it. I know some people hate cardio, and if you hate cardio, don't do it. I'm not telling you have to do it, but this is, if you enjoy it, are there benefits? Yes. All right, guys, thanks for watching today's video. I tried to keep it simple and to the point because I'm getting so many questions, and to be fair, I love the questions. They're actually good questions. To my surprise, I'm still getting posts on this Instagram message I made Sunday. So I'm gonna try to get through all these. It looks like I'm gonna have to go into next week, but I really enjoy giving you guys feedback. I love the comments below. I'm really enjoying just getting to know all the things that are going on with you guys in the fitness community that have these questions, and I'm happy that I'm able to answer some of these questions. If you've made it this far, I would really appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button, click the like button. Both of these things help me out. They both get me motivated to keep doing more video, answering your questions, and have a great Thursday, and I'll have a new video out for you tomorrow. I'm just gonna keep going down. I see some more great questions coming up, and I'd love to get them all in here, but I like to keep the format a little bit short. Plus, I got other stuff to do today, guys. Have an awesome day.